How would you react if I told you Ragnar Lothbrok's story in Vikings is driven by jealousy that he can't get pregnant? You would probably laugh at me, but today I'm going to prove to you that the idea isn't very far from the truth. Before we get into it, there are some necessary disclaimers I'd like to say since this is the internet and stuff lives forever. I am not a psychologist, I am not an expert in mythology or theology, and any mistakes are not intentional and mean no disrespect. These characters are morally gray, some, as I like to say, morally midnight, and none of this that I'm about to say should be construed as a defense of their characters or their actions. And this video does not constitute an endorsement of the show, the actors, or the source material. I am merely an author who's made storytelling my profession, and I enjoy finding the nuance in characters and these fictional worlds. I also have no proof that the writers did any of this on purpose, but it's important to think about. Now, let's get into it. Ragnar Lothbrok is one of television's most memorable characters. He's charismatic and clever, formidable in battle, and a dangerous political opponent. Not to mention he is a near constant Orifarm. Will that term date my video in the future? Yes, it will. Will I use it anyways? Yes. Yes, I will, because it is accurate as hell. I mean, example. In fact, while we're here, tell me your favorite Ragnar scene in the comments below. He can outsmart every opponent, scale the walls of Paris, and defy the gods. He's a strong character from a purely craft perspective. But Vikings is a cautionary tale, and Ragnar is a corruption arc. One of the most interesting parts of his development is his envy and greed, and one of the most telling aspects of that greed is his approach to fatherhood. Because of all the things the mighty Ragnar Lothbrok can do, there's one thing he can't, and that's give himself sons. Let me be very clear, the ability or inability to give birth does not make anyone more or less of a valuable person. What I am saying is that Ragnar is a powerful vehicle to understand the subconscious effects of womb envy on ourselves and the outside world. Vikings explores this concept, and Ragnar and Ecbert are effective mediums for that discussion. So today we're exploring what womb envy is and how, in increasingly subtle ways, it became the driving force in Ragnar Lothbrok's story. Obviously a warning for spoilers throughout since we're talking about his arc. Brief note that I will be using male, female, and divine feminine language throughout this video, but this concept can exist through the spectrum of sexuality and gender, and connection to the divine is not limited to any single expression. My verbiage and words here merely express the ideas through the lens of the show, and are by no means meant to be exclusionary. With that said, I challenge you to stick around and examine this with me because womb envy has had an undeniable impact on the world we live in. Whether you have a uterus or not, you have a place in our real-world universal narrative, and the more we understand about how this particular envy presents itself, the more we can do to make our world a safer, more empathetic place for us all to live in. Media literacy is one of the most valuable skills in existence, and memorable characters often teach memorable lessons. Let's start with Ragnar's prophecy. He's promised by the gods that he'll have many sons, and the show constantly examines all the characters' beliefs in the divine as both a truth and a self-fulfilling prophecy, leaning on the idea that two things can be true at one time. Vikings portrays a man's sons as his strength, the continuing of his bloodline, and his name and memory reaching into the future. In their world full of violence and uncertainty, your only way to be remembered is to be famous, and your children carry on your claim to fame. At one point, Ragnar goes to the seer and asks if it's true that he'll have many sons. The seer rattles off a list of achievements that inspire awe in Ragnar, and then something very interesting happens. Ragnar asks, "What about Björn, his first son?" And the seer says, "It was of him that I was speaking," implying through subtext that Björn could accomplish all of Ragnar's hopes and dreams. Björn is enough, even though he had to grow up believing he wasn't, but that's for an entire other video. And yet, Ragnar is not deterred. Here we see that his envy for more sons is concretely introduced into the narrative. They are a benchmark, a goal he will do anything to reach. It's not healthy to think about children in this way, but the show makes a strong point by doing so. Should parents bring life into the world for their own purposes, for their own fulfillment and validation? That's a question that we each have to ask ourselves as we watch. And I believe that Ragnar's core beliefs in this matter have a strong impact on Bjorn and Ivar specifically, but again, that's a topic for another video. And speaking of Bjorn and parents, we need to talk about the two mothers who create the foundation for the show's narrative events. Lagretha seems to have lived most of her married life under the prophecy that Ragnar would have many sons. You can see many times that this becomes a point of emotional pain, contention, and determination for her. She experiences a miscarriage early in the series, and together she and Ragnar go on a pilgrimage to Uppsala where she prays for fertility. The loss of their child is understandably devastating to both parents, and Ragnar takes this as a sign that Lagretha is not the woman who will provide him with the children he values. Leaning on the prophecy, Ragnar steps outside of his relationship and falls in lust, then love, with Aslog. Aslog is a princess who can see the future through visions. She conceives a son with Ragnar, and her relationship with him causes tensions between Ragnar and Lagretha, ending in their separation. Aslog goes on to become the mother of Ubba, Hvitserk, Sigurd, and Ivar. Don't you worry, I plan to make an entirely separate video for Ivar and the Dark Messiah trope, but all this to say, Aslog fulfills the prophecy. Ragnar has his many sons, but at great personal cost to himself, Lagretha, Aslog's happiness, and their combined future, considering the fallout between all 5 sons that upends the Lothbrok legacy in the show. Both women, Lagretha and Aslog, have their own claims to fame as Shield Maiden and Princess, respectively. As Queens of Kattegat, both participate in religious services that honor their gods. Aslog's visions also connect her to the unseen world in many ways that those around her don't understand. The portrayals of both of these women lean heavily on the many aspects of portraying the divine feminine. Ragnar requires proximity to them in order to fulfill his prophecy of fathering many children. And in order to understand this reliance on proximity to the divine feminine and how that lust for life-giving power affects Ragnar, we next have to look at Ecbert and Judith. Ecbert, the king of Wessex and Mercia with aims to be king of all England, serves as a parallel to Ragnar. Both are ambitious men at the top of their political power with ambitions to take land by force and create a lasting legacy through colonization and imperialism. Ecbert wants power, supposedly, to protect the people he loves. Ragnar wants power, supposedly, to provide for the people he loves, with both of those concepts happening inside their minds, not in the outside world. But the truth is that both are willing to shed blood to make that happen. I'll be moving through this next part quickly and connecting a lot of obscure dots, so bear with me. Ecbert is a Christian who believes he has committed too many sins in his political maneuverings to enter heaven. Enter Athelstan, the perfect middle ground between Ragnar and Ecbert. Both Ragnar and Ecbert believe Athelstan is a holy man because the theme of the show posits that knowledge and curiosity equal a window into true divinity. Athelstan and Ecbert's daughter-in-law, Judith, conceive a child, Alfred, who is born out of wedlock because Judith is married to Ecbert's son, Aethelwulf. Ecbert becomes fascinated with Judith and her relationship with Athelstan because he believes Judith has experienced proximity to the divine by conceiving a child with a man that he believes is holy. In my interpretation, Judith is constantly reinforced as a woman who values her freedom of choice and constantly seeks to increase her knowledge. These last two things the show holds of utmost importance. When Judith is cruelly tried and punished for her adultery, Ecbert steps in to preserve her because he believes she is mother to a holy child. Whether Ecbert truly believes this or loved Judith and wanted to use this religious and political maneuver to save her is the viewer's choice. What remains is that after this, Ecbert and Judith begin a romantic relationship, and I believe they fall in love. While what Ecbert and Judith have is considered sinful to the world around them, Ecbert has 2 monologues that stand out in relation to the purpose of this video. In the first, he is in prayer and tells his God that he understands he may be damned, but he would sup with the devil if it meant he could achieve his earthly aims. In short, he's telling his God that God gets to live up where it is pure and holy, and Ecbert has to live down in the dirt, and to survive he must get his hands dirty. The second monologue, he speaks to Judith, with, I would like to observe, far more reverence than he has ever spoken with to his God. He confesses he can lie to everyone, but he cannot lie to her. He has forsaken God's forgiveness, but he wants her approval. Subtextually, he has placed her in a divine position in his life. In short, Ecbert believes himself damned and clings to Judith because he believes she is the only thing in the world that equals a holy love for himself. Combine this with Lagertha's earlier accusation that Ecbert only thinks about himself, and we have solid grounds to understand that Ecbert desires Judith because her perceived connection to holiness and knowledge makes him feel safer while he lives with his own choices. Ragnar believes his gods have forsaken him as well due to his choices. He has steered his life, he is the master of his fate, but he relies on Lagertha and Aslaug to continue his bloodline and thus carry his memory into the future. We can follow this logic to explore how the show portrays the key leading women as personifications of various manifestations of the divine feminine, and the two leading men of the first half of the series as longing to be in proximity to their energy. This next part may be difficult, but once again I ask you to bear with me. Content warning for miscarriage, impotence, and infertility. Vikings takes the time to intricately explore male impotence and its connection to a desire to exert power over the outside world. Toxic, patriarchal masculinity makes men believe that if they're impotent, they're not powerful, and that is a dangerous, harmful, and hurtful way to view yourself and the world around you. And that danger bleeds through the narrative of Vikings. Through the lens of the show, we see characters that experience impotence or infertility explore their feelings about these matters. Now, in the modern world, we know that these experiences are not quote-unquote game-breaking. Fertility does not make anyone more or less of a worthy and valuable person. But in the series' time period, children are the claim to the future, and thus fertility is valuable. Earl Haraldsson in Season 1, Lagertha throughout, and Ivar during the second half of the show all examine the experience of characters who have lost children or have had difficulty conceiving or providing the baby batter necessary to do so. The ability to create life is so valuable to this society that they are willing to make extreme personal decisions and sacrifices to fulfill that role. Earl Haraldsson displays obvious tensions with his wife Siggy because of his perceived impotence after the loss of their children. Lagertha is heartbroken over Aslaug's pregnancy after she lost her own child and separates from Ragnar rather than confront those incredibly hurtful and difficult feelings. Ivar defends himself with drastic and devastating aggression when his brother Sigurd accuses him of not being able to satisfy a woman. When accused of this, Ivar kills his brother in a fit of rage. Freydis later on goes to extreme lengths to convince Ivar that he can have children. Through these displays, we can see these characters are acting from places of insecurity. Everyone in the series wants some sort of power or sense of safety and remembrance, permanence, some claim to the future. And in the lens of the show, children are that security. Sons magnify your power, and sons enter the world through a womb which cannot be forced to conceive. Like Hosier's song, Swanapunlita, expresses, the window to the world will never belong to man, or for that matter, mankind. You can't force conception. Speaking of the world, this brings me to my final point. The overarching metaphor that spans the entire show and drives this theory home. Throughout the Vikings series, Ragnar and then Ubba's goal is to find more land to farm for their people. We see the main cast go to great lengths to make this dream come true and observe various rituals intended to bless and increase the harvest during seasons of sowing. Follow me on this metaphor. The goal of the characters in the show is to take control of fertile farmland. Mother Earth is called Mother Earth because of the life she supports. Land is one of the first things of historical monetary value because of its ability to sustain life. Based on the narrative, the Vikings are in search of farmland to feed their people. Without this, they fear for their future. Their desire for this future is strong enough that they will sail through unknown and dangerous waters, wage war, and bathe in blood to lay claim to fertile soil that they believe will support their people for generations to come. Despite the opportunity to open with trade, they choose to conquer and colonize land that is not theirs to satisfy their greed. Seeds are sown here for colonialism and imperialism, which are fundamentally and inextricably tied to toxic masculinity and the development of the patriarchy. And that right there is where it all pulls together. From the beginning of the show, land is portrayed as a life-giving, life-saving resource. Ragnar's sole dream is to find fertile farmland to feed his people. But he cannot provide that. He has to go search for it and lay claim to it through violence. He believes in the prophecy that he will have many sons that will continue his mission in the world and help this dream of controlling land come true, as well as discover many new places, make names for themselves, and achieve lasting fame, lasting memory. But he cannot provide that, so he goes out of his relationship to bring the prophecy about. Through the parallel with Ecbert and Judith, we see the coveted proximity to the divine femininity that connects one realm with the other and brings life into our world. And every single story-moving choice that Ragnar makes is to find land, father his prophesied children, and take land that was not rightfully his by force when diplomacy fails. And diplomacy fails because these characters do not want peace, they want power. A diplomatic conqueror is still a conqueror. Womb envy is defined as a male desire to give birth, and in the absence of being able to create life, many resort to taking life instead. The outward expression of that jealousy has led to centuries of patriarchal oppression, bloody conquest, and violation of the sanctity of the sovereign entities of the world. At the beginning of this video, I proposed that the understanding of Ragnar's story can guide us toward creating a better future for ourselves, like he sought to create a better future for his people, but Vikings is a cautionary tale, and Ragnar's story is a corruption arc. Thus, I believe we can learn from his mistakes. So at the end of this video, I'd like to first thank you for watching, and second propose one question that you can consider for yourself. How could we change our world and create our legacy if we chose to set aside our envy and instead value others rather than seeing them as a means to an end? And that's all we've got for today. If you like this video and enjoy exploring media literacy, I'm starting a course on my Patreon where we break down the core components of media literacy so you can dissect stories like this for yourself. I'm on Patreon as Lizabeth Phoenix, and I'll be continually building that course. If you like the way my brain works, you might like my books, perfect for fans of Star Wars, Transformers, and Vikings. The Gifted King is a grimdark Anakin-esque corruption arc following a prince who sacrifices his humanity to save the ones he loves from the vengeful god of chaos. But the twist is, the god lied. We've got tropes like man versus the divine, broken brotherhood, and corrupted royalty, and unstable politics. I am working on the series now, and I have the links below. And you might like my socials, where I discuss media literacy, character creation, my storytelling journey, and more. You can find me at Lizabeth Phoenix on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and I'll see you there.